Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are drawing Nightcrawler and I'm going to be talking a little bit about effects and lighting. Not necessarily lighting effects, but, effects and lighting. The two of them separately, because we're going to have to do a bamf, which means I have to do some sparkles, I have to do some smoke, I have to do some like various different colored smokes in there. So that'll be some painting stuff, which we'll get into later. And then there's a degree of this which is also posing, because Nightcrawler is one of those more acrobatic characters, meaning that they got to do a lot of posing stuff here as well. And then I also have to deal with the tail. And then there's the lighting of where Nightcrawler typically has very particular lighting on him. He has like the hard shadow on his face at all times, so we'll have to see how I do that, because I don't typically do very inky drawings, but we'll see what I do with this. Anyways, I'll roll the intro and I'll show you what I have. So, this is what I've got. As I say, there's a lot of stuff in the background here. Like, I have all this stuff in the background just as a sort of baseline for me to follow later. This isn't anything I have to really worry about right now. And I have these little sparkles and stuff like that put in there just to remind myself that I have to do it, because I'm going to have to do the sparkles as lens flares, which I can simply do by using the gradient tool and then setting it to this, and then just doing a little one. I can't do it right now, but I'll use that later as for my little sparkles. I'll just use the gradient tool to throw a little sparkle in these little places. They'll be small, but not and not super distracting, but they're just there to add a little bit of flavor to the bamf, because as I say, I'm going to need to do a couple of different colored smokes. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to have a flat background color, probably a blue or something like that. I'll have as the background color, and then have like a dark purple smoke, and then have like a sort of pinky smoke which is right behind him, and that will then smear out into these sort of lines that come out here, which I have as bits of reference there. But yeah, and then as I say, I'll have to sort of light the smoke in a certain way where there's that sort of kind of pinkier color in the middle. I'll need to pull up some reference of that later, but yeah. So then we have to deal with the lighting of where I'm probably going to do like a colorful rim light on this one. I might do like a pink or purple rim light, just that's like a sort of an interesting one. Technically speaking, the soft light is going to be over here, and then it's going to be a rim, and then our darkest part is over here, so we'll have like a little rim light covering this side of him. And so then we also have to deal with the fact that, yes, as I said earlier on, there is this sort of deep shadow on his face, which kind of has to be there because that's part of his character. He always that's part of the design really, is that he always just sort of has that deep dark shadow on his face. Normally it sort of like blends into his hair, so it makes it hard to tell where his hairline is. It kind of covers his brow, sort of, to a degree. Now what I might do with this is I might leave a sort of line here and just along this edge here, so that I can do that in the detailed shading. Maybe, we'll see. I might just do it as black. It might make more sense to just do it as black. I don't know. We'll see, because it has to be really dark. But I want to keep some of these details. I don't want to lose too many of his facial details. So we'll see. I might just leave a line in there for where that sits. But I'll have a think about that anyways. I'll have a think about it, because it's one of those things of where it's sort of important that it's there, even still. So I might do that as a paint. I might do it as as part of the detailed shading later. But I don't think I'm going to do it as black. But we'll think about it. It's the type of thing which I can change and fix later on if need be. Because again, I can just go back into the details and I'll just cover that. It'll make it a bit messier, but I can do it. Yeah, one of the things which I suppose is worth mentioning is the fact that Nightcrawler's haircut is probably one of the more inconsistent parts of his design. The rest of the design is remarkably consistent, with just the red and the black and then the white gloves and boots. I guess they technically count as boots, even though they cling to his particular foot shape rather neatly. And then there's obviously the tail, which isn't always like super pointed. Now the reason why the tail looks so big is because it's actually looping out and this is technically in front. The better way of showing that would be to have it sit in front of something, but I didn't want to do that for the sake of visual clarity, so I just left it back, but it is quite big looking, even though eventually, because it's looping forward. that it's sort of coming out like that it's coming out of the out towards us. But yeah. What else do I need to mention? Yeah, as I say, the hair. The hair is one of the things which is very inconsistent. Sometimes he's sort of got this sort of moppy kind of hair that sort of goes in front of his face. Sometimes he's got a sort of a clear, slicked back hair. Sometimes it's sort of it's a kind of a messy short hair where it sort of falls a little bit in front of his face. It's inconsistent, but I chose to go for something where it's like, oh, it's sort of slicked back and messy, but there's also bits which sort of fall in front. And I think that looks alright. Granted, again, a lot of this area is going to be quite dark, so we don't need to worry too much about it all, really, all in all. I need to actually think about something which I didn't think about before, which is what are the colour of his teeth? Are his teeth yellow, like his eyes, or are his teeth white? I don't actually know. I'll be checking that later anyways. I'll have to open up some reference and stuff and have a look at that. But, yeah. So I don't actually think there's a huge amount I need to cover. I think realistically speaking, this should actually be a kind of an easy one because most of my stuff that I have to deal with is much later, like lighting stuff and then effects. That's all like later things. I don't have to worry about that right now. Ordinarily, the hard part is front loaded, and then all the easy stuff is at the end. But I think it might actually be the other way around this time, so we'll see what happens. In theory, I should be able to get through all the sort of detailing and all that stuff pretty fast. And then I won't have to think about all the sort of challenging stuff until I'm dealing with paintbrushes. And whenever we get to the paints are actually usually quite easy. Normally, whenever I'm dealing with like paint stuff, it isn't particularly time consuming because it's mostly, whenever you're dealing with paints, you just sort of have to realize that you have very little control over what happens with them. You have more control obviously in digital paints, but largely I try not to try too hard to maintain control over the paints, because sort of the reason why you want to use a paint is because you want something which looks a bit more natural. If you want something very controlled, then use a fine hard edge. If you want something that looks natural, use paints, because paints will give you a more natural look, because they flow and they move in sort of ways that a hard edged brush won't, or like a pen or any of this stuff. Whenever you're using paintbrushes, even digital ones, they're going to sort of move in ways that are designed to be unpredictable. Now, technically speaking, with a lot of paintbrushes, digital paintbrushes, they aren't technically speaking like a sort of flowing kind of thing. A lot of them are effectively like a pattern, sort of, that builds in specific spots on the canvas. That it sort of is a repeating pattern that, say, you might get a thick spot here and then you might get a thick spot here because it's technically like mirroring, stuff like that. You get that with certain ones of where it's technically actually like a pattern brush which is just mirroring and repeating in certain areas. It's more obvious if you were to sort of do a full coat of paint over a full canvas. You'd be able to see the sort of patterns that would form, which you wouldn't really be getting in a real paintbrush. But that's sort of the concessions you make with digital stuff like that. Anyways, I've sort of rambled enough, I think. I'll start these details and then I'll be back to do the colours. So yeah. Alright, that is our details done. As you can see, things are a lot simpler whenever there's no background stuff going on. But that is not going to be the case for much longer. So, as I said, I'm going to need to lay in a sort of background color. I'll probably just pick like a deep blue, dark blue, maybe something a little purpley. And then I'll obviously need to start laying in my smokes and stuff like that, which I'll do, I think, at the end of this. So that shouldn't be too challenging. Lighting is obviously that's later's problem. I'll have to select or I'll have to think about a sort of color palette for this. Something maybe reddish, purpley, kind of bluey, purpley, maybe reddish. I don't know. I have to think about that maybe. Yeah, there are not many colors going on here, so in theory this should not take very long to do these colors. Yeah, so I did just put in a little line here just so that you can see it. Put in little lines here and there just to show where the sort of hard shadow on his face is, which I'll obviously have to go back in with my paint brushes and then my detailed shading and apply some dark to that area of his face, just so that we still get that sort of heavy shadow in front of his face without having to do it very inky, because I don't think that will look right to me. Anyways, yeah, really the colors shouldn't be too challenging. I kept things fairly simple for the most part with all my line work. I sort of recently I've been applying sort of a kind of harder edge with a lot of the lines. I've been, anything that sort of abuts the edge of the sort of figure I tend to make pretty thick. So that's sort of what I've been doing a lot recently. I think it works. I think it makes the character pop a little bit more, just to sort of give him a harder edge. It looks a little bit more interesting. But yeah, so I'll have to do my sort of background stuff here. That'll be the sort of primary time sync with this, because again, there's like less than 5 colors. Well, no, there's about 5 or 6 colors that I have to think about here. Not many really. So it shouldn't take too long to do the actual like character colors. So after that, then I'll worry about the background, and that'll maybe take a bit, because as I said before, I'll have to do the sort of I have this as my example. I have to do a sort of base layer of smoke, then I have to start putting in like the pinky smokes, and I'll probably have to go in with my dark color again, and then go through and sort of redisperse it and shape it a little bit more, add some sort of volume. So yeah, I don't want it looking too flat, but we'll see what I manage. I will carry on here. I'll do the colors and then we're back to do the painted shading, which obviously that shouldn't be too difficult either. So yeah, anyways, I'll move on. That is our colours done and our background done. Now, I feel like the sparkles might look a little crappy upon like actual any sort of like looking up close at them, but whenever I feel like you look at it from a distance, It looks alright. It adds something anyways. I lowered the opacity on them because I felt like they were a little too sharp. Like the sort of blending along the edges of them isn't quite deep enough in. I feel like I would kind of like it if the sort of edge of them sort of bled in a little bit more, so that it was a more of a sharp two lines. Well, more sort of clean two lines, and the sort of blending around them was a little bit less. There was a little bit more. I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is. The blending around was a little bit more subtle, something like that. But well, this is what we have to work with, anyways. I feel like the actual bamf in the background, all the smoke looks pretty good, and that looks about right. So I think I'm happy with that. You might be hearing some fireworks every now and then in the background because there are a lot of fireworks going on right now. I'm just trying to speak at a reasonable volume so that they should be louder than them if they do go off. But yeah, we're going on to the painted shading now, which realistically speaking, that shouldn't be too tricky. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have my softer shading over here, and then my darker side over here, because this is where I'm going to put my rim light, and the rim light will probably be like a purpley color. So yeah, this will be the darker side, this will be the lighter side. I'll probably use a sort of was it a reddy color that I wanted to use for the lights? I want to double check my color palette here because I have one picked out. Yeah, it was more of a blue for the dark and then a purple for the light, so that should still work the same way. I suppose it'd be better that we have a sort of darker shade that isn't the similar or isn't too similar to our what I'm going to use as the light line, because the light line will be like a purpley color. Because I want it to sort of look interesting in that sense. Now, granted, actually, I'm thinking now about the sparkles. They'll probably get a bit more muted by the gradient map. The gradient map will sort of probably thin out the blend a little bit more because the gradient maps are always dark. Yeah. Anyways, I'll move on. I'll do this painted shading. We'll be back to do the detailed shading and the light line and all that stuff. So yeah. Anyways, I'll move on. Alright, that is our painted shading done. I think that came out quite nicely. Obviously now I'm going to need to do the detailed shading, so I'm going to be adding a bit more depth to some of the shadows on his face. Specifically, added a slight little lighter wash to the black, just so that it has a bit more sort of depth of light hitting it, because a lot of the times in a lot of the reference images I'm seeing in front of me, there is sometimes depth to that black, sometimes it is just pure black. I prefer how it looks whenever there's a little bit of depth to it, so we're going with that. So yeah, what else am I thinking of here? So yeah, I'll have to do my light line, which I'm going to have be like a pinky purple color, like this sort of one here. And then I'm also going to do my first gradient map. I already have my color palette selected. I've been sort of working off of it this whole time as a sort of kind of dark bluey purple on the one end, and then a kind of reddy pink on the other. So that should give it a nice sort of range, but which isn't too far from what we've already got. Anyways, I don't see much of a need to sort of ramble a bunch. I've kind of got everything I needed to say out of the way. You're just sort of going to be seeing the kind of final lighting and effect touches. But then I'll probably run through a little bit of that after I'm finished here, obviously. I'll have a little bit to say about that once I'm done. So I suppose without any further ado, I'll get on with it. Anyways, I'll move on. Okay, that is our detailed shading, light line, and first gradient map done. I'm sort of not sure with this gradient map. I'm not sure if I want it to be an overlay, where it's a lot more vivid, or soft light, where it's a little subtler. See, the problem with the overlay is it definitely sort of sucks some of the life out of this purple, or this white a little bit. It really kind of makes it very purple, whereas obviously here it's a little bit more even. Let's do the other ones and we'll think about it. We'll see how it comes together after that. So I want luminosity now, so obviously I'm going to make everything darker. I'm going to want to turn this down pretty low, I would say. Or maybe one... No, I don't want to do 15%, 20. 20 is normally what I go for. It's more vivid underneath. It's a little bit more fine on top, I think. Right, make another duplicate. Step down to color burn. Doesn't actually seem to be doing very much. Well, how does it look on 5%? Let's see, because that's normally what I do with this. It's very subtle on this, it's just a little darker. Doesn't seem to be doing much. Okay, right, well, let's see what is going on here. If it's on overlay, it's realistically the same deal. Well, I have left it at 70%, which is a little higher than I would normally leave it, so I think maybe soft light will probably be fine then. Now, I obviously did my texture and everything, or I'm going to be doing my texture here now. You can probably hear a couple of those fireworks in the background for some bloody reason. Alright, let's slap this texture on. Okay. Now I'm probably going to want this to be pretty subtle because we've got a lot of paint in the background here, which this may interfere with a little bit. It'll sort of dry it out. Is the sort of look that it ends up giving it, which isn't necessarily what I want. 10%. 10% texture. It's subtle. It just sort of lightens things up. You can see it on these sparkles. It definitely lightens them up a little bit. Doesn't do much to our character, which is fine. We never usually want it to do much. We just want it to lighten things up a tiny bit. That seems alright, that seems alright. It's bringing out our lighter parts a little bit more. I'm okay with that. Okay, that seems good. Alright, that's basically it then. In the interest of not subjecting the audio to any of the torture that those fireworks are going to bring, I'll probably wrap things up pretty soon. So yeah, I did everything I kind of wanted to here. All my sort of effects and lighting stuff was fairly easy. I apologize, my eyes are a bit itchy today, so I'm trying to avoid going at them, but can't help it sometimes, especially given that they are watering. But yeah, so I ended up getting a lot of the light that I wanted. As you can see, the sort of rim light here has a nice sort of look to it. It has this sort of nice, the kind of pinky rim light is very nice, I think. It sort of adds a little bit of depth to things, and I think a lot of the shading actually came out quite nicely. I think this sort of hard light on his face kind of works well. It's not 100% dark, but it's pretty dark. You can still make out the details there to a degree, but obviously the way the gradient maps work, it sort of darkened them to a point of where it's kind of what I wanted. But again, not too dark. You can still sort of see those details. They're still there. They're just a little bit more masked via the gradient map. But yeah, so I think I got everything I wanted out of this. I think, as I said before, the sort of sparkles are a bit crap looking, but I think from a distance, whenever you're sort of just kind of glancing at it, it looks a lot nicer, I think. And I think the gradient map definitely helped by kind of thinning it out a little bit. But yeah, I think ultimately I'm quite happy with this. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to get out of this. I'm pretty happy with it. So I'll just wrap things up and then I will say goodbye. So if you liked the video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, whether that be liking or not. I'd prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that. So all I can do is politely suggest that you do so, which I believe I've done. Same deal if you want to subscribe. I'd of course prefer if you did that, but you know, you don't have to. It'd be nice if you did. You've presumably seen a YouTube video before, so you know where the subscribe button is. It's below the video. You can do whatever it is that you would choose to do with such a subscribe button. You can smash it. You can do all those things. And yeah, if you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you can leave a comment, politely worded, or not at all. I'd rather you leave a comment that is polite rather than leaving one that is not polite. If you're not going to do a polite one, just don't leave a comment at all. And if you choose to watch the next video, I'll see you next time. So with all that said, that is us. So I'll say bye, and I'll leave you. So, bye-bye.